I don't even think I have to tell you guys which movie I just came from. I just got back from watching the Wolverine. It's the Saturday night after opening night. I knew I wanted to see it opening weekend. I wanted to see it, unfortunately, opening night, but I couldn't, so Saturday night it was, and unfortunately I picked a really bad day to go because the theater I was in was pretty packed. Tried to keep my squeeing down, in which I did, luckily, but there was a girl behind me who was laughing throughout the whole freaking movie. It sounded like she was a fangirl, and she just kind of was giggling at every kind of reference or fangirlism that you could probably think of in this movie. In terms of what I was thinking before going into this movie, I was not, I would say maybe 2 months ago, I wasn't really anticipating good things about this movie. I didn't think it was going to be that good. I thought maybe, oh, it might just be a repeat of Origins Wolverine. I didn't think it really could get any worse because Origins was pretty damn bad, so it's like, it might be good, might be kind of the same as Origins. Could be bad levels of Last Stand, whatever. I was far more anticipating X-Men Days of Future Past than I was this movie, and X-Men Days of Future Past doesn't even come out till next year. I am just so excited for that movie. But I would say within the last week and all the reviews I've been hearing, surprisingly, feedback on the film was coming in pretty good. So I suddenly became really interested in wanting to see the movie and making sure that I saw it opening weekend. And I'm glad I did because I think this movie really pretty fun movie. It's not quite on the funometer as Iron Man 3 was, but it's definitely up there in terms of blockbuster kind of popcorn action movies. This one's really good because it's a movie that does follow the context of its universe, as well as does the pretty much the exact opposite of everything X-Men Origins did wrong. And one of the biggest issues I had with X-Men Origins was the sheer amount of character cameos that had no importance to the plot and were basically completely destroyed in terms of character integrity, which is my biggest requirement from a comic book film, is that character integrity is maintained. Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, at this point, I can't see anybody else playing Wolverine. Even in Origins, he was a good Wolverine. That was the only good thing about that movie, was the fact that Hugh Jackman still convincingly plays a good Wolverine, and probably the only one I can really consistently think has a very consistent performance. He's very much in that league with Robert Downey Jr. of, it doesn't matter if the movie overall is bad, you know that their performance is going to be stellar. So, that's the great thing about those actors and those characters that they're portraying, is that you just know they're going to be amazing because they know these characters and they know them so well inside and out that it will never matter what kind of situation they throw them into story-wise, you will believe it's that character. It's everything else that has to kind of work around it. And luckily this movie, everything else around Hugh Jackman, works a lot better. There's certainly there's certainly issues with the movie and some things that are distracting and kind of nitpicks mostly, but that they detract just enough to not make it a great movie. But it's not bad. It's honestly just a really fun sit. It's a good X-Men movie. If you wanted a much better standalone Wolverine movie, this is definitely it. Yeah, it's definitely far better than Origins. Origins, I was very excited for Origins before it came out. One of the reasons is because Gambit and Deadpool were going to be in it, and Gambit is one of my favorite characters from the X-Men universe. And I was so excited to finally see him in a movie. He's only in it for 10 minutes. And so is Wade Wilson, who is not actually Deadpool because Deadpool has his mouth sewn shut. The fuck? Basically, they tried to cram in way too many characters, and they ended up destroying those characters in the process. Performances are really solid. The only person in this movie I would say that I didn't really like their performance was the woman who played Viper. I think her first name is Svetlana. I can't remember what the fuck her last name was. It was just a whole bunch of letters to me because it's probably very Russian sounding. She does play this very over-the-top kind of comic booky villain character, and that Viper I never really thought of as like that. Like, yes, she's very much this villainess, and she's sort of the what you think of when you think of evil villainess, sort of like the Baroness from G.I. Joe, very much in that kind of realm. But this was just so over the top and so cheesy and campy. It's just like, no one talks like this or acts like this or has the intelligence that she has and does these things, or at least acts the way that she does. Also, her look. Her look was a big issue for me. She's just very cartoony looking, especially because everyone else around her in this movie is so normal looking, and it is a very realistic setting. It is a very grounded, realistic type of movie, and she just really sticks out like a sore thumb amongst everything around her. She literally goes from sexy scientist get up, like immediately what you think of sexy blonde scientist, to blonde woman who could be mistaken for a prostitute, which she is, to audacious green outfits with shiny skinny pants and really coiffed up hair, while she's doing her evil woman talk, to even more ridiculous green skin tight outfit. It's like they literally just took the word viper and tried to make her look as much like a snake as possible. Which, yeah, that's fine, because I mean Spider-Man looks the way he does, but I mean it's the idea that Bryan Singer tried so hard to ground the X-Men universe in a sense of reality, in that not everyone in this universe is supposed to look like a model or supposed to look freaking gorgeous. These are supposed to be normal people. These are humans who just happen to be born with a certain ability that doesn't automatically make them supermodels or attractive really in any way. It just means that they can look different sometimes, and the biggest examples are Nightcrawler, Beast, Mystique. Those are the characters that we most identify in the mutant world for looking really different, having extreme mutations in terms of their appearance. But with somebody like Viper, it's like they just took it to boom, like she was just trying to stand out. And it just kind of bothered me. Like, her whole look really bothered me, and her attitude bothered me. I mean, I know she's the villain, but she's also really not the main villain either. Like, she's really a secondary villain. So it's like it's almost like she's trying to upstage the actual villain. So getting into other details, like I'm gonna try to avoid spoilers for a little bit. There's some really good flashback sequences in this movie. Every flashback that's had is either through one of Logan's nightmares, which he has consistently through the movie. He's had that consistently through all the movies where he's been nightmare prone, and the flashbacks are well timed. They actually match the story and what's going on, so it's all tied together. It's not just like a jumble of different flashbacks and things, and you just kind of have to piece it together. It makes sense, and it's just totally a nice linear format, easy to understand. So it's like, okay, I like this. I love that the movie starts off with Logan running away from the Nagasaki explosion that happened in World War II. What a badass. He can outrun a nuclear explosion. Good for him. But yeah, he basically gets he's basically saving this guy who ends up becoming who we know as Yashida in the movie. He was basically a soldier in the military during World War II, and Logan saves him by pulling him into this giant hole during the bombing. Literally, Logan is like throwing him into the hole, and then gets like flung into it himself from the shockwave and from the I forget what the actual term is, but it's like that ring of fire that just kind of goes out after a nuclear explosion, but he literally gets caught in that, and so he's like burning alive. And the effects are really good when they do that too. The effects are really good in this movie. I'm not going to go too long about it, but effects are really good. Claws look fantastic. CGI looks great. Nothing too overworked, just really good. That's just awesome to start off with. He's running away from the bomb in Nagasaki. What a badass. And there's a lot of really good fight sequences in this movie. There's one at Yashida's funeral. There's another that's on a bullet train, maybe about 5-10 minutes later. And then after the bullet train, there's not really another major fight sequence for another 40 minutes. Like, it goes a while without a fight sequence. And considering this is an action movie, this is a big summer blockbuster action movie, it takes its time with its plot, with its pacing. It doesn't rush into anything, but it doesn't feel slow either. Like, it feels like you're consistently moving, and it feels like the plot is going, and you're just kind of going along with it, and it makes total sense with where it's going. Um, and the action sequences are perfectly within context of that pacing. It just logically makes sense. It doesn't feel like they're just rushing to the next action set piece that we're like, okay, let's get to another one, let's get to another one, let's get to another one. That's if the audience doesn't have a fight sequence, if Logan doesn't punch somebody, that they're gonna be totally uninterested. There's a lot of really great moments in this movie. I'll get to some of my favorite moments in the spoiler section, because I'll actually refer to specific scenes. I think the first one I'm going to talk about is the end credits scene, because that's the question I've been getting the most. That's the question I've been getting a lot is, what's the end credits sequence? What's the end credits sequence? I'm like, it's exactly what you expect. It's Logan is in an airport, everything metal starts to shake, Magneto shows up, and then so does Professor Xavier. That's the end credit sequence, and it just basically shows on the TV screen a preview of Trask Industries, foreshadowing the Sentinels. But this is all information we just got from San Diego Comic-Con, and we really honestly we saw this coming, so it's not like we didn't really know, but it's like we knew it was going to refer to Days of Future Past. Like, there was. And I knew it had to be something with Professor Xavier and Magneto. Like, who else would they get, really, other than those two? It's like, that's the only ones that would make sense. But, that's it. I would say 3/4 of my theater left before the end credits sequence. And it wasn't even an end credits sequence. It was a mid-credits sequence. And 3/4 of my theater left. I was like, what is wrong with you people? Do you not know Marvel at this point? Every movie is going to have an end credit sequence. I was in shock. But getting beyond that rant, Jean Grey is back a lot in this movie. Logan has a lot of one-on-one time with Jean Grey, and a lot of the fantasizing I think that he was thinking about during the original trilogy. There's sometimes it gets a little awkward with the sexual tension, and it feels like, but other times it's very appropriate. It's very intimate, and it's very layered, considering the state of which Logan feels guilty about Jean's death and where that all left off with X-Men: The Last Stand. So a lot of this movie is Logan dealing with coming to terms with Jean's death, his part in her death, as well as being able to move on from it. A major theme in this movie is the fact that Logan really wants... It seems like he really wants to die, and it's like he's gone through so much pain and so much anger that he's just ready to let it go so he can be with Jean. And it's like, it's just so heartbreaking to look at that and to see somebody that you can tell desperately wants to stop this suffering that he's going through. It's and there is some really nice closure in the end of it, because he ends up having a final sort of vision of Jean, and it's very and the reason it's closure is because he realizes that he'll love her, he'll always love her, but he's not ready to die yet, and he has to move on with his life. That he is a soldier, and that he will continue to seek justice, and he will continue to do the right thing, because that's the thing that Wolverine has always done, despite the fact he's been a loner, a lone wolf, basically as a character for a vast majority of his run. He is still a good person, and he still does the right thing, and he will continue to do the right thing in any situation. It's the reason he had to kill Jean, was because he knew it was going to be the right thing in the end, because she was hurting people. It was just such a touching moment, and it gave a nice sense of closure to that story arc, because they focused so heavily on their relationship throughout the movies. And it's nice to see that there is a closure with that, and that you see that closure not only with him having that final vision, but also with him starting a relationship with Mariko. And it makes total sense because it's just like Logan has had many relationships throughout the comics, and it's Jean Grey is not the only woman he's ever loved. So it's just kind of nice to see that we're finally moving on from this. It's no longer going to all be about Jean. He can finally have a new woman to obsess over. There's a lot of really funny scenes in this movie, a lot of nice laugh out loud moments, considering that the rest of the movie is very serious. It takes itself seriously. It's not too campy, but when it has its nice little camp moments, they're very appropriate. I feel like "go fuck yourself" has become his new catchphrase because he says it to Harada. And it's just like, that's badass. And it's like, flashbacks to First Class, yay. Go fuck yourself. And there's also a great scene with him and Mariko when they get off the bullet train and they're trying to find a place to check into and to hide out from the Yakuza who's after them and after Mariko in particular. They check in, Logan accidentally wants them to check into a love hotel. And it's so funny because the lady at the desk doesn't speak a word of English. Logan doesn't speak a word of Japanese. So Mariko's the in-between. And he's like, we need 2 rooms adjacent to each other on the same floor. And this woman's not understanding a word he's saying. And so he's like, Mariko, can you translate this? And so she tries to ask her. And the woman's like, no, we don't have any rooms that are like that. You can have either the dungeon, I forget what the second one is, or Mission to Mars. And how you know which one they chose is because the immediate next cut is the keys in Logan's hand as they're walking towards their hotel room. It's a giant ass spaceship keychain that's like the size of a dick. It's really funny. I'm just like laughing my ass off because see the image of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine checking into a love hotel is hilarious, especially if you knew about love hotels before this. It's just so funny out of context. Even in context, it's really funny too, but out of context, it's just fucking hilarious. One negative that I'll point to is there's a lot of one-liners. And I know Wolverine is known for the one-liners. I know he does that, but this one was a little kind of forced. None of the one-liners seem to be really some of them really do work. Like the "go fuck yourself," that one just works perfectly because it made sense within what the scene itself. But there was one in particular where Wolverine is in the final fight of the movie with the big baddie, who I'll get to in a little bit. But he's basically fighting him, and he says something like, something like "goodbye" in your culture, and then he's like, "sayonara," and then shoves him off a cliff. It's like, especially considering all the emotional trauma that you just went through and the physical pain he just went through, because, okay, it's big spoiler alert, his claws were just cut off. You'd think you wouldn't be making such wisecracks, but it's like, yeah, what? It's a nitpick. It's a very I should say it's a very small nitpick. But it bothered me a little bit. The music is really good in this movie. Music is really well made with the action sequences in particular. It's not overplayed in the quieter moments of the movie, but even in the action sequences, there's great moments where it's very much in the background and you hear more of the ambient noises around them more than anything else. There's a great point where they're in the very first action scene of the movie where they're having a fight between the Yakuza at Yashida's funeral, and Harada is aiming a bow and arrow at one of the Yakuza guys, and the music just kind of like fades out to a point, and then he shoots his arrow, hits the guy, and then runs off again, music starts up again. It's just like a nice little beat of silence rather than a punctuation mark of music. And it's nice to see a composer that knows how to use silence, that knows that like you can still have music in a movie, it's just pull it back and don't shove it in people's faces, especially in the action sequences where it's like the like just pull it back a little bit, let the environment kind of inform us of the chaos, because there's a moment during that the same sequence where Logan and Mariko run through a pachinko gambling area, and all you really hear, like, you still hear the music a little bit in the background, but you mostly hear the pachinko sounds and the sounds of the machines, and it's that, if anything, makes it more chaotic rather than having music blasted into your face. It makes more sense, and it makes you feel more in the environment. It's The movies are supposed to be all about immersion and putting yourself in the movie. And this movie's really good at that, especially with the music and the sound design, I should say. The big twist of the movie, I don't really want to say I saw it coming, but I did see it coming. Yashida, who is the man that Logan saves at the beginning of the movie when the Nagasaki bomb drops, he is an old man who's dying, and Logan goes to see him to say his goodbyes. And he basically tells Logan that there is a way to transfer one mutant's power to another, to basically take away a mutant's powers from them. And Yashida is saying this because he knows Logan has been suffering, and he's saying, don't you want to end this? You are a man that has lived a long life, and it sounds like as if you just want it to be over and to have that closure. And that's really a big theme of this movie, is closure, finding closure in a lot of things, not only in your own life and finding closure for your life, but in previous guilts, like his killing of Jean Grey. So Yashida's telling him this, and he's trying to convince him to let him take his healing factor. And Logan's like, you're out of your mind. Sorry you're dying. See ya. And then that night, Yashida dies. But it's also the same night that Logan's powers are beginning to be suppressed because Viper attacks him. And we don't know what exactly happened to him. We think that, he's lost his powers. But realistically, throughout the movie, his powers are just being suppressed. He hasn't lost his powers completely. So at that moment, I realized that's way too coincidental. I think Yashida is going to be the main mastermind behind all of what's going to happen in this movie. And it turns out he is. He's the one who's operating this sort of mech version of Silver Samurai. He's operating it, and at the end of the movie, he's trying to forcibly take Logan's healing factor from him. And it's a really dramatic, painful scene to watch because he's like digging holes into his bone marrow, and it's like, oh my God, oh, Jesus. And you feel so twisted because Yoshida has very much been built up in this movie. He's sort of built up as this very kind old man who has seen a lot in his life and doesn't want his next of kin to have to see the things that he saw, and like as if he's learned from his experiences, and that he really values knowing Logan and all this kind of stuff. And then he turns around and he just becomes a monster, and he's just this megalomaniacal evil guy. Like, it just totally turns around, and it's a genuinely actually really good twist, despite the fact I saw it coming. If you didn't see it coming, it probably was really a really good twist. I quite liked it. Especially the fact that Mariko is the one who attacks him because she so idolized him, and she was the one who looked up to him and modeled a lot of her life after him. And so for her to see him turn into this giant monster attacking the man that she's now fallen in love with, it startles her, and she retaliates, and it's great to see that, especially considering she's mostly been kidnapped throughout the movie, but she does know enough self-defense moves that she could like fend off for a little bit, but she doesn't obviously know, she can't defend herself like Logan can or Yukio can. So it was nice that she's the sort of one that dealt the blow that really kind of hit him and really weakened him, because it came from his own blood, and it was so gratifying to see that. I like that there's some scenes that take place in Canada. Woohoo, go Canada! And so I just kind of like that. I was like, yay, they're in the Yukon. It's no longer Alberta, because at least in the Yukon it makes sense that there might be some snow on the ground, but it always kind of annoyed me in the previous X-Men films when it's like summer in New York, but then it's dead middle of winter in Alberta. It's like, I'm sorry, as soon as you hit the border, it does not become the tundra. it was kind of nice to see, like, okay, they're actually going to the Yukon. There could actually be some snow there almost year round in some points. So it's like, yeah, that's a little bit more practical. The plot itself, you know, a lot of the times people say when you watch a summer blockbuster movie, you kind of have to switch your brain off. And for this one, you actually don't. You can actually follow it along and really piece a lot of the stuff together and be like, even within the context of its own universe and within the rules set up within its own film and within the continuity of all the films, there's actually some really good continuity in this movie from the other films. So it's like, okay, it does make a lot of sense with itself once you think beyond just the action and the fighting and the one-liners. There's actually some really genuinely good character moments and some great performances here, and as well as some great cinematography, good music. I think it's a genuinely good movie. I'm probably not going to see it again in theaters, but I'll definitely be buying it once it's on DVD. I want to see bonus features. Better than I expected. Way better than I expected. So, I don't know what that means about a review, but better than I expected. Go see it. Hopefully I'll be doing some more reviews in the near future. I'm a little behind with doing some other work right now, but hopefully I'll get some other reviews done. I'm planning on seeing The Conjuring in a couple of days, so I might do a review of that. I know I said I was probably going to do a review of Shadow People and Mimesis, but I ended up watching those movies, and they're just really nothing kind of movies. Like, I don't really have an opinion on them. I can't really say too much about them. They're both just kind of, they weren't bad, but they weren't great. It was just like, just meh kind of movies. If you're gonna watch Shadow People, like, there's a couple of interesting moments, but it's more confusing than anything else. Mimesis, interesting premise, but not really much else once you get beyond the premise. It's just kind of like watching Night of the Living Dead again, so it's like, yeah, I may as well just be watching Night of the Living Dead. But that's about it. Again, hopefully I'll have some more reviews out in the near future. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you later. Ciao.